I can tell you the exact second I stopped auditioning for my own life. It wasn't when Jessica laughed, though she did, and it wasn't when her three best friends, Tiffany the strategist, Brittany the mood, and Samantha, who everyone calls Char because she insists on burning the last syllable of her name, filed into my kitchen like a live studio audience. It happened a heartbeat before the punchline. Jessica's phone, face down on the counter, buzzed 6 times in a row, and she smiled at it the way you smile when the spotlight finds you. Then she turned that smile on me and delivered her line. Stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with. The chorus laughed exactly on cue. Tiffany did her signature snort, Brittany clapped once like someone had nailed a high note, and Char went ooh like a kettle. I stood there with a wooden spoon in my hand and marinara hemorrhaging off it onto the tile, and I felt something in me pack a small bag, put on a small hat, and leave. That's the best way I can describe it. The last part of me that was still trying to negotiate us into existence slipped out a side door and didn't look back. We've been together for 2 years. She'd lived in my house for 6 months. My name is on the mortgage and the water and the trash and the little plaque by the door that says D. Wilson's in brushed nickel because one night after a glass of wine and a Pinterest rampage, she ordered it without asking. Optimism. You can screw into brick. I don't hate optimism. But optimism, like any home improvement, is supposed to be measured first. I'm not a tyrant. I'm a graphic designer who keeps his spices alphabetized because it makes the world sing quietly in the back of my head. My ideal Friday night is a frozen pizza brand I haven't tried, a new font to hate privately, and the kind of movie where nothing explodes except for the main character's idea of himself. Jessica's ideal Friday is a group chat, an outfit that looks like a dare, and an entrance with a witness. If you put those two people in a room, you can make it work, but only if both people want to. Only if both people believe they're in the same story. Which is why the laugh mattered more than the line. Laughter is a map, it tells you where the power is. The laugh said I was furniture that had spoken out of turn. The laugh said this house was a stage, and I was a prop big enough to sit on and small enough to ignore. It was a relief, in a terrible way, to hear it so clearly. Sounds fun, I said when the girls announced the weekend at the lake, like there was only one. Which lake? A laughed harder. The joke, apparently, was that I had asked a logistical question in a relationship that ran on vibes and applause. You heard me, Jessica said, chin up. I don't report in, you don't get a say. I smiled back and said the four most expensive words I've ever spoken, and also the cheapest. You're absolutely right. They took it as a retreat. Tiffany patted my cheek like I was a houseplant that needed to accept its drought. They swept out together in a swish of perfume and summed up womanhood, and the door clicked behind them. The sauce bubbled. A strand of pasta stuck to the cabinet like a pale question mark. I turned off the stove. I cleaned the spoon. Then I put my phone on the counter, opened my laptop, and started a new file called LAK. The girls left the next afternoon in a hatchback stuffed with gowns that looked complicated and suitcases that looked embarrassed. Jessica kissed me on the cheek like you kiss a very sweet neighbor who has offered to watch your plants. Don't wait up, she sang, a line that she thought was rakish and I heard as homework I wasn't going to do. The second the taillights turned the corner, I walked next door to Mrs. Gables. She's 80, widowed, 5 feet nothing in a robe the color of wet violets, and the head of a surveillance network that would shame federal agencies. She knows trash days, dog walkers' routes, and which teenager got a muffler installed and thinks that makes him invisible. She also grows roses the size of teacups and believes that lemons matter more than sugar in lemon cake. I brought her a slice on a paper plate and presented it like a brief. Trial? She asked, eyes brightening. Something like that, I said, and told her exactly what had been said in my kitchen. Mrs. Gable pressed her lips together in a line that has ended many a neighborhood dispute. In your house, she said. On my tile, I said. Then we will be tasteful, she said, and by tasteful, I mean devastatingly polite. I may need your help, I said, if she comes back confused, if she tells a story that is louder than the truth. What's my line, she asked, already in character. I told her. She rehearsed it once, perfectly, and she patched my ham like a judge who approves of a concise closing argument. Back in my kitchen, I opened the LA key file. The thing about a chorus is that someone always wants to be heard more. Tiffany posts performative mindfulness, Brittany posts drinks, and Char posts everything. Within 12 minutes, I had a boomerang of champagne clinks on a deck, a shot of toes at the edge of weathered wood, and a caption, "You Lakey vibes." Char had made the classic mistake of geotagging the first night and assuming she could remove it the next morning without anyone noticing. I noticed. She tagged Lake Verona, about 90 minutes from us on the highway that thinks it's a river. I clicked through Char's stories like I was opening mail. There was a shot of a house with string lights. There was a live laugh lake sign that made me feel violently principled. There was a pan across a dining room table dressed up with a charcuterie board the size of my desk. At the edge of one of those pans, barely in frame, was a man's arm. Tan, expensive watch, noted. I did not call Jessica. There is a thing that happens when you are not believed consistently enough. You become a librarian for your own life. You put dates on things, you print receipts, you don't argue, you archive. I took screenshots, I saved them with timestamps, I went outside and took a photograph of my front door, the plaque with the Wilsons gleaming unironically in the afternoon light, not because I wanted to be dramatic, but because later I knew there might be a contest about who lived where and why. I didn't pack her things yet. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted the act, when it happened, to have the weight of patience. Friday night, I made pasta for one and ate it at the counter with a pen and a legal pad. I wrote headings, people, places, patterns. I put her three friends' names under people and drew small arrows pointing to habits I knew like the back of my hand. Tiffany posts early, Brittany posts late, Char posts impulsively. I wrote out the nearest gas stations to Lake Verona, the marinas, the rental outfits. I wrote down the names of Airbnb hosts I could find by cross-referencing the view off that deck. A crooked pine, a pair of white kayaks, solar string lights on metal poles that come in a 3-pack from a certain big box store whose inventory I know too well because I have opinions about price points. At 10 p.m., Char posted video from a deck where you could hear laughter from inside the house, that female chorus of triumph and self-appointment. The camera panned toward the lake, then swerved back toward the glass doors when someone knocked a wine glass against a bottle for attention. The man stepped into the frame as if he were being announced, which, inside that house, he probably was. He was the kind of handsome that gets away with being a little too loud. Broad shoulders, Trinity Kiss tan, hair that had a relationship with product. I didn't know him firsthand, but I had heard the name before. Once, months ago, when Jessica had told a story over dishes about an ex who thought money was a personality trait. Cole. She had said the name like you say the name of a hurricane you have survived. She had rolled her eyes. He was a phase, she had said. He was an era. He was an education in what not to want. The camera panned away too fast for me to see his face head on, but it lingered long enough for a small glint to catch the string lights. A band, on his left hand. At first I thought I was imagining it. Rings happened, then the camera cut to Char's face again, and when it cut back, because she was always cutting back, editing her own life on the fly, the man had an arm around Jessica and she was laughing into his shoulder like the punchline hadn't arrived yet, but she knew it would. The ring caught the door light again, just enough to make my stomach think while my brain caught up. There are men's wedding bands and there are men's engagement bands. I know this because my friend Tyler got one when he and his fiancée did everything simultaneously and proudly. This ring had the thickness and shine of a thing purchased at a boutique, with glass cases and phrases like custom setting and timeless. I put my phone down, stood up, and paced the length of my house like a dog who hears thunder. There's the obvious answer. You're seeing what you want to see because you're hurt. And then there is the practical checklist that keeps you from acting like a fool. Check angles, check reflections, check corroboration. I sat back down and scrubbed the video slowly. At the edge of a mirror behind the buffet, you could see them from an angle Char hadn't intended. Jessica and Cole facing each other closely, the bottom half of their faces smiling because the top halves were busy calculating. The mirror also showed a framed print near the door, the Verona house, the Airbnb's name. I wrote it down. I did not pour a drink, I poured water. Then I did the thing that saves you from explanation. I made a list of what I would need if I had to tell a simple story to someone who didn't want to hear it. Screenshots with timestamps, the rental listing, the geotag, a confirmatory post from someone else, preferably a man because sometimes a woman's word echoes weirdly depending on the room, receipts, locations, the sort of facts that do not care about my feelings. At midnight, I messaged my buddy Aaron, who has a talent for internet sleuthing that would be terrifying if he used it for anything other than helping friends and finding discontinued sneakers. Need a second pair of eyes, I wrote. Lake Verona Airbnb, probably the Verona house. Looking for a renter named Cole or anything that links Jessica to him this weekend. You okay? He wrote back immediately, because some people are with you in the time zone of care. I'm fine, I wrote. I want to be more fine. He sent a thumbs up, which from Aaron is basically sworn testimony. 20 minutes later, a link appeared, an Airbnb listing for the Verona house, 5 beds, 2 baths, a dock with 2 white kayaks that matched Char's story, and a review 3 weeks ago from C, whose profile picture was a boat bigger than my ambition. Amazing quiet place, the review read. Great for a small celebration. We'll book again. Match? Aaron wrote. Strong, I wrote back. I owe you the shoes. Size 11, he wrote. Don't get weird colors. I lay in bed with the photos, tucked in a folder on my phone like a secret I was sure not to enjoy. Sleep came like someone had cut it out of cloth with dull scissors. I dreamed about ring lights and door locks and my own name written on a plaque in a stranger's handwriting. In the morning, I woke up into the kind of calm that is not a mood but a decision. I made coffee. I ate toast with peanut butter because the routine could stand upright where I could not. Then I went to the closet and brought out the moving boxes I had bought when she first moved in. Optimism of a different kind, the kind that thinks organization can invent fairness. I started with clothes. I labeled like I was filing evidence. Everyday clothes, fancy dresses for friends' birthdays, dresses for other men's birthdays, jackets for restaurants that require reservations, high heels 35 pairs, podiatrist nightmare, makeup and skincare, face paint and bottle promises, jewelry, glitter that says things out loud. I wrapped things that needed wrapping. I photographed everything and saved to a folder called Inventory with subfolders by room like I was staging an exhibit. I put her art in boxes, those beige abstract prints that I used to see as minimalist and now saw as a refusal to commit to a line. I called a moving app, and two guys with forearms like forgiveness hauled the boxes into a rented truck and followed me to a storage place with corrugated doors and a manager who called everybody boss in a way that made you feel briefly better about your worst decisions. I rented Unit 42 for a month and paid cash because I wanted the receipt to be simple and because there is something quietly operatic about sliding a metal door down on a version of your life. When I got home, the house looked like a hotel room after checkout. It did not bring me glee, it brought me oxygen. I took the plaque off the brick, the one that said the Wilsons and brushed optimism, and wrapped it in a towel and put it in the hall closet. The holes looked like a colon waiting for a sentence. I did not buy a leather couch with 16 cup holders or an AstroTurf rug with yard lines. That was a different story in a different mood. I bought myself a wool rug the color of lake water at evening, a coffee table made of reclaimed wood, and a record player because the internet keeps trying to make me a vinyl guy and I wanted to see if it was right. I set the player up by the window. I put on an album my father loved and had never admitted to, jazz that sounded like a conversation where both people heard each other. The needle found the groove and the house changed temperature. On Sunday afternoon, I drove to the lake, not to the house, to the marina nearby. I told myself I wanted to walk, to breathe spruce and water and a kind of air I didn't usually buy. But really, I wanted to see if the world was going to cooperate with my facts. The parking lot was gravel, the kind that gets into your shoes and your sentences. Boats came in and out with men demonstrating competence to one another using knots and fenders and the volume of their voices. I bought a soda from a vending machine and found a bench with a view of the dock. 20 minutes later, two women walked past me in the direction of the lot carrying tote bags that said LA Care Don't Care and faces that said they cared. 2 minutes after them, a couple came by him in a sweater that cost more than my phone and her in sunglasses that assumed she would always be looked at. I recognized Jessica's posture from behind. You learn such things when you share a bathroom. The man's hand brushed hers. The ring caught sunlight in a way that felt like an announcement. It was not a wedding band because nothing about them read after. It read before. It read before. It read promise. It read, we are telling this story out loud. I stared at the water. I counted 6 ducks. I tried not to think of words like betrayal and instead thought logistics. If she was engaged, to whom, for how long, and during what math compare with us? If she was telling one man one story and another man another? If the girls were in on it or just terrible at silence? I took out my phone and took a photo of the dock, then put my phone away because I did not want to be a man who lived through glass. Back home, I opened a new document called Dossier. I put in the screenshots. I put in the marina photo, even though it showed nothing but water and the possibility of my own restraint. I wrote out a timeline. Jessica moved in 6 months ago. First mention of Cole 3 months ago, dismissive. Second mention, none. First odd weekend, 4 weeks ago, a girl's retreat that came home with a new dress and a smell I couldn't file. This weekend, geotag, ring, arm around her. I typed dates. I dragged files into folders and gave them names that made me feel like I was building a case against my own capacity to doubt what I saw. At 5 p.m., a doorbell camera sent a notification. Mrs. Gable appeared on my phone in high definition, a small monarch on a concrete throne. She held up a Tupperware container like a peace treaty. I opened the door. She pressed the container into my hands. Lemon bars, which in our neighborhood mean moral support with powdered sugar. I took a drive, she announced, as if she had just returned from a diplomatic mission rather than the grocery store. On my way back, I saw a black Escalade with a temporary tag drop off your Jessica, a block over on Saturday morning. Driver carried in cases that clinked. Thank you, I said, and meant both the information and the ritual of the pastry. You don't have to. I like to, she interrupted. Men your age don't always get witnesses when they are treated like furniture. Consider me the balcony seating. She sat on my porch step and looked at my house like it was a place she'd seen before but was curious to watch again with a different cast. What will you do? She asked. I will do very little, I said, and also a lot. She nodded as if that made perfect sense. Be kind in a way that stings, she advised. It lasts longer. I slept again like I was renting sleep by the hour. My phone stayed face down and quiet. On Monday morning, my doorbell sent me another notification at 9:02 p.m. Jessica on my porch, lake tan and humming, key in hand that didn't know it had been promoted to jewelry. She tried the lock. It did not care. She jiggled. She banged. She called. Inside, the house was slow breath and piano on low and the weight of a choice. I watched the feed from the chair where my father's record turned. My phone buzzed on the table like a trapped fly. Tom, open the door. My key isn't working. My tea isn't working. Jessica, I texted all at once after 10 minutes of watching her rehearse a tantrum. You told me we are not married and I don't get a say. I agree. This is my house. You do not get a say in how I live in it. Your belongings are secured at 123 Storage Way, Unit 42, code 1234. You have 1 month to retrieve them. Also, congratulations on your engagement. I assume Cole is thrilled to finally have a say. I hit send. The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared. She looked at her phone, then at the camera, then back at the phone. She screamed in the kind of way that collects neighbors at windows. She threw her phone at my lawn as if the grass had made a decision. 3 minutes later, Tiffany's car pulled up and my porch became a stage set for a scene called Woman Wronged. They left. The house hummed. The record finished its side. It would be very satisfying if the next part were pure fire and consequences. If I wrote that I publicly posted everything and watched the internet crucify her while I roasted marshmallows over the comments. But I have learned a thing about noise. It doesn't make truth truer. The following morning, I made a private post to mutual friends with 3 pictures. The Airbnb selfie Char had posted where Cole's ring glinted under the Verona house sign, my living room with the blue rug and the record player, and me with the dog I did not yet own because that belongs to a different story. The captions were careful. Congrats to Jessica and Cole under the first. Moving forward under the second. FM radio is cheating under the third. People who knew us messaged with questions. I answered some with silence and some with one sentence. I did not explain. I had explained for 2 years. If explanation worked, I would have been done long ago. By noon, one of Cole's friends, men like that always have a friend who prefers to appear reasonable because it's a good brand, messaged me, "Hey man, is there some misunderstanding?" I replied, "No." He sent a thumbs up and, 3 hours later, a screenshot of a group chat where someone had typed, "She told him Tom was a roommate. My hands didn't shake." That felt historic. That afternoon, a letter appeared in my inbox from a lawyer whose website looked like a paycheck advance in Helvetica. It demanded immediate access to my residence and compensation for causing her to be temporarily unhoused. I replied with a PDF packet, mortgage in my name, utility bills bearing only my name, lease copy where her name does not appear because there isn't one, photos and inventory list for Unit 42, a friendly paragraph noting that if their client wished to discuss 6 months of rent and utilities she had enjoyed as a non-contributing guest, I would be happy to provide a spreadsheet. We did not hear back. I am telling you all this not to paint myself as cunning, but to lay out the quiet arithmetic of how a decision becomes livable. Part of me wanted spectacle. The older part of me, the part I had ignored for months because it was not very glamorous, wanted peace. Peace looks like receipts with dates and a changed lock. Peace looks like a house with a rug the color of lake water and a record playing a song your father would have loved. Peace looks like a neighbor who will tell the truth with a watering can in her hand. In the evening, I walked the long way around the block and saw my house from down the street. It looked ordinary in the way that testified. Lights on in the living room, a plant in the window that had started to thrive when I remembered to rotate it, a front step that had been swept recently by a man who has learned that small, clean things matter. I stood there for a minute, a man by his own house, and felt the strange, unfamiliar weight of not being in a story I had to fight to stay in. Part of me still wanted to ask a question I knew the answer to. Why? Why tell me one story and him another? Why move in with a man whose mortgage you could recite and then call him a roommate on the weekends? Why say the line in my kitchen and think you'd not hear an echo? That is the kind of question that eats you. So I wrote another list instead. In the dossier, I added a section called Lessons. It had 2 bullet points. Believe people when they tell you what role you play. Set your boundaries on paper, not feelings. Around 9, my doorbell pinged again and I watched, for the second time in 2 nights, a small theater assemble on my porch. Jessica came alone this time. No Tiffany, no soundtrack. She did not knock. She looked at the door like she was trying to remember its history. She sat down on the top step in that way people do when they don't want to admit their legs have opinions. She stayed there 5 minutes. 10. I went to the door and put my hand on the cool side of it and did not open it. When she left, she took her phone with her this time. Progress, technically. The next morning, I called my bank and changed 2 small things I should have changed long ago. I locked down card authorization and put alerts on the accounts that had begun to sprout free trials I did not recognize. I changed the Wi-Fi password and didn't name the network anything clever because sometimes the cleverness is the part of you that still wants applause. I named it Network. I wrote the password on a card and put it in a drawer, and I was the only one who knew which drawer. By noon, Char had posted a black screen that read, cryptically, "Not everyone deserves a seat at your table," which I found funny given how often she filmed the table. Tiffany posted nothing. Brittany posted a smoothie. Jessica posted a story of a road receding in the rear view, accompanied by lyrics that should be retired for humanitarian reasons. I posted a photo of my rug. The caption said nothing. A friend sent me a message that read, "That blue slaps." I wrote back, "Sometimes water is enough." That afternoon I made a binder, not because I planned to use it as a weapon, but because I needed something to hold in my hands that wasn't a phone, a memory, or a lock. It was matte black and had those plastic sleeves that make paper feel like it matters. I put the marina photo first, then the Verona house screenshots, then the timeline, then the inventory list for Unit 42 with the access code written on the cover in careful block letters. On the spine, I wrote a single word, context. When I finished, I set it on the kitchen counter with the weight of a choice. If she came back with a story, I would hand her a book. Read it or don't. Either choice would be an answer. That night, I did the one thing that still felt like prayer. I called my mother. She's a woman who thinks advice should be short enough to fit on a grocery list. I told her the short version. She sighed the sigh. Mothers sigh when their sons remember to protect their own oxygen. "Are you safe?" she asked. "I am." "Is your house safe?" "Yes." "Are you telling the truth?" "I am." Then let the truth do the work, she said. You don't have to explain it to people who need noise. We talked about my father. We talked about a jazz record he used to play on Sundays while he made pancakes, and how the house smelled like coffee and warm oil, and a man who was happy because he was making something. After we hung up, I put that record on again and flipped the sign inside my head from open to closed. By the time the weekend was fully behind me, the word fiance had stopped ringing like a fire alarm and started settling like weather. I didn't know if Cole had given her a ring that weekend or months ago. I didn't know if the girls had known and laughed louder because their job required it. I didn't know if Tiffany would ever bring back the casserole dish she took last winter, but I suspected she wouldn't. What I did know was that I would not ask Jessica to tell me a story that contradicted the one her actions were publishing. I would not stand in my kitchen arguing about lakes with a woman who had already chosen a shore. When the doorbell rang again on Tuesday night, I didn't check my phone. I opened the door. Jessica stood there in a sweatshirt I bought and leggings I paid for and a look that tried to be brave and managed instead to be loud. She didn't cross the threshold. She looked at my face the way a person looks at a locked safe hoping for a stethoscope and a miracle. You're being cruel, she said. I'm being honest, I said. You embarrassed me, she said. I congratulated you, I said. It's not like that, she said. What is it like? I asked, genuinely once. She did not answer. I held the binder up between us like a polite shield. This is for you, I said. It has the storage info. It has dates. It has the things you'll need if you need to tell yourself what happened later. You don't have to read it. She didn't take it at first. Then she did. Her mouth opened, then closed, like a fish reconsidering air. You blindsided me, she said eventually, choosing a word that can be installed on almost any grievance if you kick it hard enough. That's not true, I said calmly. You announced it in my kitchen. You were clear. She stood there a long moment with the binder in her hands, and I thought, briefly, of the plaque in my closet. I had removed a sentence from my house and replaced it with a comma. She turned and walked down the steps and didn't look back. The door closed itself because physics likes a full circle. I stood with my hand on the wood a second time and felt that nothing in me wanted to open it again for that storyline. Then I went to the record player, flipped the record, and let the next song begin. Outside somewhere, a lake held the sky like a secret it was tired of keeping. The binder sat on my kitchen counter like a loaded question. I had printed everything, screenshots, dates, the marina photo, the Airbnb listing, even a copy of the lease with my name alone. Context I had titled The Spine. I thought I would never actually hand it to her. I thought she would vanish back to her chorus, tell her version of events, and leave me to play jazz records with my coffee. But Tuesday night she showed up and I put it in her hands. Watching her carry it down my steps was like watching a thief walk away with an alarm clock. She didn't realize it was already ringing. The next morning, I expected silence. Instead, I got chaos. Tiffany posted a long story about men who weaponize logistics. Brittany reposted it with emojis. Char, true to form, posted a picture of herself with the caption, "Stay loyal to your tribe." It was noise. Loud, directionless noise. I ignored it. But then my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Hey man, Cole here, we need to talk. My stomach dropped. I hadn't reached out to him. I had barely said his name aloud, but now he was in my messages, typing like we were colleagues after a messy project. She told me you were just a roommate, his next message read. Is that true? I sat with it. The room felt too small, the walls too close. I could have lied, I could have explained, but I was done auditioning. So I sent him the one thing that required no rehearsal, a photo of the plaque that had hung by my door. The Wilsons. Brushed nickel optimism. My house, my name, my mortgage. Then I sent a screenshot of Jessica's own words from my kitchen. Stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say. Cole didn't reply right away. 10 minutes later, 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, thanks. That's all I needed. That night, Jessica's social media went dark. Posts vanished. Stories expired without new ones to replace them. Tiffany went quiet too, which was almost louder than her rants. By Thursday, Brittany had unfollowed Jessica entirely, and Char Samantha, as I preferred to think of her, posted a black screen with the caption, "Some stories write themselves." Friday morning brought a new kind of drama. A letter slid under my door, crisp and officious. Legal letterhead. Words like wrongfully dispossessed and rendered homeless. Demands for immediate access to my residence and financial compensation. I read it once, twice, then set it on the table and laughed. A sound I hadn't made in months, sharp and real. Because the letter was a stage prop and I had already written a script for this act. I compiled my packet, mortgage statement, utility bills with my name alone, timestamp photos of every box I had packed, the receipt for Unit 42 at the storage facility, and a copy of the message I had sent Jessica with the access code. I stapled it all together with a cover letter of my own. If your client wishes to discuss repayment for 6 months of rent, utilities, and groceries consumed while living as a non-contributing guest, I will gladly provide a spreadsheet. I dropped it in the mail with the satisfaction of a man mailing back a costume he never wanted to wear. We never heard from that office again. But the story wasn't finished. Saturday evening, just as the sun made the windows glow, 2 police officers knocked on my door. Someone had reported a welfare concern, a woman locked out by a controlling boyfriend. I stepped outside, folder already in hand, because I had known this scene would be scheduled eventually. The older officer had a mustache that belonged in a library. The younger one looked like he had been lied to 12 times already that week. Evening, Mustache said. Evening, I said. I handed him the folder. Everything is in there: storage receipts, photos, lease, mortgage, her own text messages. I've done nothing illegal. The younger officer glanced at the window where Gus pressed his face against the glass like a furry witness. Nice dog, he said. He believes in loyalty and snacks, I replied. They flipped through the packet. They nodded at the dates, the signatures, the clarity of my handwriting. We're not here to pick sides, Mustache said, which is what people say when the paper in their hands already has. They left with polite warnings about noise complaints. I watched them go, then turned back to my house, my rug, my record player. Gus flopped against my leg like he was confirming the verdict. By Monday, the story had turned itself inside out. Jessica tried one last performance, a tearful live video about betrayal, toxic men, stolen belongings. She tagged no one but spoke as if the world were her jury. But the comments didn't cooperate. Mutual friends asked why Cole had been at the lake. Someone dropped a screenshot of her with his arm around her. The narrative crumbled in real time. She ended the stream abruptly and didn't post again. The harpies fractured. Tiffany, tired of being dragged, posted a rant about freeloaders and tagged Jessica by name. Brittany went silent except for smoothie pictures. And Samantha Char sent me a message I hadn't expected. Tom, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. We shouldn't have laughed that night. It wasn't fair. I stared at the message. Then I typed back. She said what she said. I believed her. Samantha replied with a single line. That's what finally broke her. Jessica moved out of the city within a week. Word traveled, as it always does. She went back to her parents' house 3 hours away. Cole vanished from her feed entirely. Rumor said he called off the engagement. I didn't care enough to confirm. My house was quiet again. My Wi-Fi password was mine alone. My dog snored against my leg, loyal and unbothered. One evening, sitting on the porch with Gus sprawled across my feet, Mrs. Gable joined me. She handed me a glass of iced tea and said, well, that play closed quickly. It was never a play I wanted to be in, I said. Good, she said. Now you can write your own. That night I thought about the binder still sitting in my closet. Context. I didn't need it anymore. The truth had done the work. Jessica had told me who she was. Cole had told me what he needed. And I had stopped auditioning for a story that wasn't mine. That was the ending. And maybe the beginning, too. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes the simplest revenge isn't fire or fury. It's paperwork and silence. It's believing someone when they tell you you're not their husband, not their partner, not their priority, and agreeing with them. It's building a life so solid they can't shake it no matter how loud they perform. It's finding peace in the snore of a dog and the hum of a record player, while outside, the chorus finds a new stage. She said I wasn't her husband. She said I didn't get a say. She was right. And now, in her life, I don't. In mine, she doesn't either. So tell me, what would you have done if you found out your living girlfriend already had a secret fiance? Would you confront her face to face or do exactly what I did and let the receipts speak for themselves? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button if you think the truth always wins, and don't forget to subscribe. The next story is even wilder.